to let Thank you all so much for joining us today to one of our first Pave Your Way events of the summer. I hope you come away and well informed of our Global Policy Studies program. For those of us who haven't joined us for a Pave Your Way event, please have a heartfelt welcome from our team and the leadership here at the LBJ School. We're excited to have you all as a part of our community. Today, you'll hear from Dr. Rayday mostly about the MGPS curriculum and some of our key faculty teaching in that program. We hope that you're able to engage with us. If you're able to have your camera on, we love to see you and start getting to know you and even engaging kind of in this virtual world. If not, we totally understand. We'll utilize the chat feature today. So Dr. Rady will stop periodically to ask questions and allow you to raise your hand and come online. But if you've got questions as we go along, the team and I will be answering those in chat. You're welcome to also direct message one of the OSA staff members if you've got more of a personal question about your situation or yourself or something like that. But again, we're so glad to have you here. And Dr. Rady, take it away.
All right, thank you, Laura. So thanks to everybody for joining. Congratulations on getting admitted to the LBJ School and on your very wise decision to accept our offer of admission. I am Dr. Lawrence Vede. I teach mostly in the MGPS curriculum here at the LBJ School. So I teach versions of the nature of the international system, policymaking in global age, writing and communication for global policy. I've directed the global crisis simulation for the past couple of years, and I teach a few courses in my area of interest, which is the European Union and the world. I am currently in Budapest, Hungary, where I'm doing a study abroad program, and I'm about to teach a bunch of UT undergraduates about democracy and its decline here in Hungary. So that's why the light here is very different than what you see in Laura's screen. But I'm also the Assistant Dean for Academics, which is my role here today. And so let me give you a quick sense of what we want to go over today. Your graduate coordinators in OSA, so Stuart, Laura, Maura, all of them who are online today, they're your first point of contact for everything that has to do with advising, right? And you're going to meet with them individually starting next week, I believe, to talk about your specific questions about registration, what courses you should enroll in. But before that, we thought it made sense for you to get an overview of the entire curriculum and an introduction to the faculty who are going to be teaching, especially your required core courses in the fall semester. So that's our main goal today. A lot of the information that I'm going to tell you is actually contained in the Master of Global Policy Studies handbook. Please take some time to read that at some point before you come to campus. Ideally, look through it a little bit before you speak to your individual graduate coordinator for individual advising. A lot of details are included in there, so please take a look at that that handbook, and I think our staff can throw a link into the chat for where you can find that. So today what we're going to do is I'm going to cover just the main degree requirements. What does the curriculum look like? I want to go over how to think about your course load for the semester, so how many courses you should be taking each semester. And we'll show you a sample schedule for how to get through the program. And then we're going to talk about the core required courses in some detail, because many of the instructors who teach your core required courses are going to join us on this Zoom call and give you a kind of 2-minute pitch for their flavor or their way of teaching that core course. And this should help you determine which section, if you have a choice of section for that particular core course, which section is maybe the one that's the best fit for your learning style. And then we're going to finish up with some of the non-core course degree requirements. So as Laura said, if you have any question at any point, feel free to use the chat. I'm also going to stop intermittently and ask you to tell me if you have any questions or if anything is unclear. So please feel free to do that. We want this to be interactive. So let me start with the overview of the curriculum, right? To earn the MGPS degree, you're going to take 8 core required courses and 8 courses that you get to choose on your own, right? So it's kind of half set for you, and half is up to you to decide. Among those 8 courses that you get to decide for yourself, 5 of them are what we call specialization courses. That just means that they need to have some sort of coherence among them. And 3 are completely freely chosen electives. And then in terms of non-course requirements, you have to complete an internship in order to earn our degree, and you need to meet our foreign language requirement, right? So what I want to, we'll go over all of these in detail in a minute. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is, generally speaking, how you should think about your course load in graduate school. So the Global Policy Studies program is a full-time program, which means that for every long semester, meaning every fall and spring semester, you're going to need to be enrolled at UT for at least 9 credits per semester. Now, 9 credits translates to 3 courses. Almost all courses that you're going to take are 3-credit courses. That's kind of the normal credit load for a course. So 9 credits basically means 3 courses. If you take 9 credits each semester, plus a summer class during one of the summers, then you are on track to graduate in December of 2026 if you're doing the 2-year program, right? You can also opt to take 12 credits each semester, so that would be 4 courses each semester, and then you're set to graduate in May of 2026. Both of these options are fine. Both of these options are full-time enrollment for all the purposes that you can imagine. So whether it's for visa purposes, for financial aid purposes, anything like that. One just gets you through the degree faster. The other one allows you to take a little bit more time. The big catch is, and this is what I want to emphasize in this section here, is that you need to ensure not to overextend yourself. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into the math that I want you to use for how many credits you should sign up for each semester. So the rule of thumb is that for each course that you take, so for each 3-credit course, you should budget about 12 hours per week for it. 3 hours is you actually sitting in the classroom, because all of our courses meet for 1 3-hour sitting each week. And then 9 hours of preparation, reading, doing your assignments, going to office hours with the professor, going to your small group meetings if you have a group project, etc. Right? So doing the actual work for the course. So that's kind of 12 hours per week per course that you sign up for. Then I want you to think about the fact that you're coming to grad school not just to take courses, right, but also to benefit from all of the extra events and activities that we have here at the LBJ school. There's going to be constant talks, conferences, professional development workshops, networking events, career fairs, student group meetings, extracurriculars, etc., right? If you never participate in any of that, you're not really getting your money's worth from graduate school. So you should also budget about 5 hours per week of just being at school at other kinds of events that are not class, right? So budget that into your time. Then there's the category of what I just call kind of general life, right? You need to go grocery shopping. You need to cook. You need to deal with errands and just life stuff that happens. You need to get some exercise so that you can maintain your sanity while you're in graduate school or generally in life, right? So think about that as just, the stuff that happens no matter what you're doing, whether you're in a job, whether you're in a graduate school, life just takes some time, right? So budget about 10 hours per week for that in your mental calendar as you're trying to put together what your day-to-day is going to look like. And then I really encourage you to also think about scheduling fun, right? Not this in the sense that you need to put it on your calendar if I'm going to have fun from 12:15 to 12:45 p.m., right? But for your mental health, you need to have some time for relaxation, right? And so be honest with yourself of, how much that's going to be. I would say budget at least 10 hours a week for that, right? Just to kind of have it as something that you're counting on, right? Just so you don't overextend yourself. And so if you do the math here, right, adding up all of these things, if you are taking 12 credit hours per semester, meaning if you're enrolled in 4 courses, all of these things add up to 73 hours per week. So that's 10 hours per day, weekends included, right? So that's a pretty full schedule, right? If you're taking 9 credit hours, so if you're taking 3 courses, it adds up to 61 hours per week. So that's 10 hours every day for 6 days per week. You basically get 1 day off, right? So be aware that that's a lot. It's tiring. It's intense. So don't overcommit yourself. And especially with outside employment, we're seeing increasingly that a lot of students take on more work than they can actually handle. So let me give you a couple of rules of thumb for what we have through our experience at the Office of Student Affairs and Admissions, and through our experience as faculty members, or my experience as an assistant dean, what I think is a kind of reasonable combination of employment and graduate school that you can manage. So if you're going to take 12 credit hours, meaning 4 courses per semester, and you hope to graduate by May 2026, if you're just in a single degree program, you can add on maybe a 10-hour job, 10-hour per week job off campus, or potentially academic employment at UT that's up to 20 hours. A lot of academic employment at UT, if you're a research assistant or if you're a teaching assistant, you get paid as a on the rate of 20 hours per week, but a lot of times the work is actually not 20 hours. Plus, also you don't have to commute, and generally speaking, UT works around your course schedule and your preferences. So you can do a little bit more if you're working at UT. Any more than that, we really strongly urge you to only take 9 credit hours per semester. So if you have a 20-hour job off campus, you can manage maybe 3 courses on top of that, so 9 credit hours. I just urge you to trust us on this. You're going to see a lot of kind of head nods from the staff who are on this call, that a lot of our time is spent dealing with students who just overcommit themselves and then end up just performing poorly academically, not because they don't have the smarts to do it, but because they simply don't have enough time to spend on their schoolwork. And so that's the worst case scenario for you, because if you get into academic distress and trouble, there's very little we can do at that point to help you. So please keep this math in mind, because it's really going to be crucial for you to succeed in graduate school. So let me pause there for a sec. Anybody have questions about that that math that I presented or mentioned? And feel free to just raise your hand in the Zoom function and come online. Okay, if not, I think our staff are going to share with you, Laura might share this with you. There's a sample schedule that we have for completing the MGPS program. And specifically, we've shown you, we've kind of laid it out for what it would look like if you completed the program taking 12 credit hours per semester or taking 9 credit hours per semester. Both of them are fine. Both of them are full-time enrollment. We can take a look at both, and that might have helped you as you're planning out your years in graduate school and your registration preferences for the fall semester. What you'll see in that schedule too, and we'll go over this in a minute, is that generally speaking, we put a lot of your required core courses into your first year. This is very deliberate. It means that when you're not exactly sure what your specialization is yet, or what you want to focus on, you don't have to make those decisions very early on in your career. So it also means that as you're getting ready for registration for the fall semester, most of your questions are going to be, okay, which section of this core course do I want to take, rather than what in the entire universe of UT graduate courses should I go for. So it makes your decision a little bit easier. And the other reason we do it is because this builds a cohort effect. So all of you are going to be going through the same core courses together. And so you will have similar PTSD from all of these courses, and you will bond over it. So you'll get to know your peers really well because you're all in the same classes together. So in terms of this core required coursework, let me just run through it very quickly. Again, you will find this in the Global Policy Studies Handbook. You will also see these courses in that document that Laura just shared in the chat. So in terms of the core courses that you're required to take, and let me stop there. Nicholas, if you have a question, please let me know what it is. You're still muted, so we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I think I pressed the wrong button. I did not have
Okay.
a question. Apologies.
No worries. Um, so in terms of core required courses that all of you are going to need to take to earn your degree, the first is analytical methods. This is an introduction to both qualitative and quantitative research methods. Whether you take this in the fall or the spring semester depends a bit on your quant preparation and how well you do on your quantitative assessment, about which I'm sure you've already gotten a lot of communication from your graduate coordinators. So as you get ready for individual advising with them, you know that that depends on kind of how well you think you're going to be prepared for those courses. The second core course sequence that you have is kind of what we call our political science sequence. So you're going to have a course called The Nature of the International System. This is basically an international relations course for policymakers, which is followed by Policymaking in a Global Age, which is a course on the policymaking process and on decision making. This is a sequence, so you need to take and complete and pass The Nature of the International System before you are eligible to enroll in Policymaking in a Global Age. And for this reason, The Nature of the International System is only offered in the fall semesters, and Policymaking in a Global Age is only offered in the spring semester. So all of you are going to be in this Nature of the International Systems course in the fall, unless you have a very specific reason why that won't work. Then we have an economic sequence, which starts with Applied Microeconomics for Policy. This course is also offered both in the fall and in the spring, but you need to complete this course before you are eligible to take the second economics course in your core course sequence, which is International Economics. Applied Microeconomics is basically just about what public policy can do to shift or change markets whenever that's needed. And the International Economics course is about what international economic organizations do, how trade works, how international finance works, just to give you the basics for that. Similarly to let me just see who it is and see if we can meet them. Thank you. Similarly to the analytical methods course, whether you want to take microeconomics in the fall or in the spring is going to depend on how well you do on the quantitative assessment. What I will say is those of you who are a little bit less confident in your quantitative skills probably want to take only one quantitative course per semester. So you probably want to take either analytical methods or microeconomics in the fall, but probably not both at the same time. The last course that I want to call your attention to that's a first-year core course is Writing and Communication for Global Policy. This is a skills course. It goes over how to produce professional policy products, whether oral presentations or policy documents, memos, things like that. This is offered both in the fall and in the spring. It's a good idea to complete it in your first year because it's very good preparation for your summer internship, if you do your internship in the summer. And then in the second year, you have two core courses left, the Policy Research Project and the Crisis Simulation. The Policy Research Project is basically your capstone. You act as a consultant with a number of your peers with the guidance of a faculty member for a real world external client on a real research project. So that's kind of what sums up a lot of the learning that you've done in your first year. And then the crisis simulation, the best way I can describe that is that it's kind of like Model UN on crack. You are going to have it in February of 2026, so in your second spring semester. It's a weekend-long exercise where you're basically intensively negotiating on some sort of frozen conflict. So these are the kind of core courses that you're required to take. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about the ones that are potentially the most important to you right now, which are the ones that are going to come up in fall of 2024, so in your first semester with us. The first is analytical methods. We lovingly call it anal meth for short. And here I just want to reemphasize, right? Depending on how you do on your quantitative assessment, it may be a good idea for you to put this off until the spring semester, or it may be a really good idea for you to actually take it in the fall. Please talk to your graduate coordinators when you're doing your one-on-one advising about which is the best option for you. There's microeconomics. So similarly, follow the advice of your graduate coordinators about when to take it. The only real math you need to know for microeconomics is algebra. So if you're comfortable with that, you should definitely try to take it and get it out of the way as quickly as possible. But again, if you're not confident in your quantitative skills, you might not want to take both that and analytical methods in the same semester. Then you have the nature of the international system. All of you are going to be enrolled in that course. We guarantee that all of you are going to get a seat in one section or another. You might not get your top choice of section, but you will be able to enroll in the course. But that's something that that all of you are going to enroll in. And then the writing and communications course, that's the one that you want to sort of think about whether you want to do it in the fall or in the spring. There are advantages to both. It might also depend a little bit on your schedule. We don't schedule any of the core courses at the same time, so you should be able to take all of them. But if there's a specialization or elective course that meets at the same time, you might want to put it off. So most of you are probably only going to be considering taking one non-core course in your first semester at most. The advantage of that is that you don't have that many decisions to make. And let me tell you why I'm still mentioning this to you. You should look through the entire course schedule and see if there's something that jumps out at you as being a perfect match for your interests. If there's something like that, please mention it to your grad coordinators in your one-on-one session, because they can tell you whether this is a course that is repeated every year and you'll have other chances to take it, or whether they think this might be a one-off or be only offered every other year, in which case you should grab your chance to take it, right? So think about the core courses, but also look through the other coursework that you see. Let me make one last point and then I'll stop again for questions. If you are by any chance interested in studying abroad, we have a study abroad program, an exchange program with the Hertie School in Berlin. And that's a fall semester study abroad program. So you would be doing this in your second fall semester. We also have a foreign policy semester in DC, which is a spring semester only program. So you could do it in the second spring of your studies. If you're interested in either of those, then you should really plan on completing all of your first year core courses in your first year, because otherwise you might not be able to make the schedule work to get all of your requirements out of the way in time and still be able to take advantage of these programs. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. You can talk to your grad coordinators about this again as you're doing advising, but just keep that in mind. So let me ask if there's any questions about these core courses, either what they cover or how you want to think about taking them, anything like that. Yes, Mary.
Yes, my question is, earlier you mentioned that the crisis simulation or the Model UN on Crack is usually February 2026. So that means that it's, even though it's a core course, it's not until later in the program?
Yes, very good question. That's a course that we offer every other year. And we just offered it a few months ago in February of 2024. So you are going to take it as second year students, and the first year students who are going to be coming in next year are going to take it with you. So for them, it's going to be in their first year. For you, it's going to be in your second year. But we like to combine the cohorts so that we can have a pretty massive group of people who are all doing the simulation together. So for you, it's going to be in February of your second year. Any other questions? I see some in the chat too. So for Sam, can the DC or study abroad options be done as a dual degree student? They can. It's a tiny bit trickier. but it can absolutely be done. What I would say is talk to both Robin, who's on this call actually, Robin Boone, who is the Associate Director of the DC Center, and your graduate coordinator as early as you can to kind of try to map out how that would be best possible. For Alyssa on dual degree students, for MGPS dual degree students, the one big thing you want to keep in mind is that you basically don't have any electives. So you're going to have core required courses and 5 specialization courses. And then you don't complete any electives, you're going to need to complete a bunch of courses for your other degree. So you're going to have you're also going to have a different timeline because you're going to need to complete more credits, obviously, to earn the 2 degrees than the single degree MGPS students. And Allison, for those people who are doing the DC semester, what we did, we had a student in that situation this past year, and what he did is he actually just flew back for the actual weekend during which the simulation happens to participate in it because he really didn't want to miss it, and then just crashed with some friends and then flew back to DC, and he actually loved the experience. So it's pretty easy to do because it's so condensed in time that you only really need to be here for a Thursday night to Saturday evening. So it's perfectly doable.
I have a quick question for the DC concentration students. Is it a requirement to complete all the core requirements within the first year?
It is. As a DC concentration student, you will do all the first year requirements. You do not have the crisis simulation as a requirement, and you do not have a PRP as a requirement. So those second year degree requirements don't apply to you. The rest do, and because you have to complete all of your requirements in your first year, your schedule is a little bit more constrained. But good question. And then Mary, for your question about study abroad, for now you can just reach out to me. So feel free to contact me via email later, and we can set up a time to chat about it. Currently, we only have one organized study abroad exchange program with the Hertie School in Berlin, but you can also kind of come up with your own. That just requires a pretty heavy lift. So I'm happy to chat with you offline about that. Great. All right. So what I want to move to now, because this I think is the real added value of this particular session for you, is to give you a chance to at least see very briefly and hear from some of the core faculty who are teaching these core courses that you're going to be taking. So I'm going to start with the faculty who teach the Writing and Communications course for Global Policy Studies. So I believe Amy Leff is here. If you are, can you just come online and in just a few minutes give a pitch for how you teach this course, and then I'll speak on behalf of some of the other instructors who are teaching sections of it, and then we'll take any questions about this particular course.
Thanks, Lawrence. Hey, everyone. I'm Professor Amy Leff. I am an assistant professor of practice, and this will be my second year teaching full-time at the LBJ school, but my third year teaching here total. The core course that I teach that you might be able to take with me in the fall is Communication and Writing for Global Policy. I also teach the communication course for our MPAF students, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll tell you a little bit about how I approach this class. So before coming to teach at the LBJ school, I worked in the tech sector. I worked at Facebook, now called Meta, and several tech startups where I worked on policy and risk management. And before that, I was in the state government here in Texas, working in workforce and economic development. And I did a lot of communications work, including writing executive speeches. So my approach to the communications class that I teach is very practical. My goal is that every assignment, every exercise we do mirrors an actual work project or work deliverable or experience that you will have in your future policy career. So I have the class set up so it's about a 50-50 mix of writing and speaking. So you get a lot of practice, public speaking, a lot of in-depth feedback, and a lot of writing. You have a writing assignment almost every week. And myself and your TA give you very detailed and in-depth feedback. And you also have the opportunity to give peer feedback to your classmates and receive peer feedback from them. So feedback is a really big part of this class in order to improve your writing and your speaking in just 14 weeks, one semester. One thing I like to mention is that my class is a little bit of a choose your own adventure in that you get to pick a policy issue that you're really interested in. And you, over the course of the semester, you'll do several different assignments on that same policy issue. And that way you can improve your writing, improve your policy communication skills, while also developing policy expertise in an area of interest to you. And a great benefit of that is being able to take that expertise and some really nice polished writing samples and use them when you are applying for internships and future jobs in the policy space. And just, I guess I'll wrap up by sharing a few examples of assignments that I have in my class. You'll write several policy memos, which is often, especially for folks who take my class in the fall, it might be the first few policy memos you ever write. So it's kind of an exciting opportunity to take your writing skills that you're bringing in and use them in a new way to write a very structured, clear, informative policy memo. You also get to do some advocacy in my class. So you'll do an op-ed where you're writing a piece that could be published in a local newspaper or a state level newspaper. I've had several students who have published their op-eds with various journals around the country. And one of our last assignments of the semester is a written and oral testimony for a congressional hearing. So you'll get some practice thinking about how to communicate to legislators, to policymakers, how to make a really persuasive argument. And again, you'll get to build more expertise in a policy area that you're interested in. I'll pause there and see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you. As you're coming up with your questions, let me give you a quick pitch for the other two instructors who are offering versions of this course in the fall semester. A new faculty member who is coming on board this fall, her name is Alexandra Sukolo, is going to offer one section of this writing and communications course. Her background is she has a PhD in history, but she actually is a Russia expert, and she worked in the intelligence community for a number of years. So her approach is going to be, obviously in many ways similar, that it's going to be very much applied writing, writing that is non-academic, that is based on sort of real world events. But knowing that, knowing her background, she might be a little bit more security focused. This is a course where you get a lot of feedback from the individual faculty member. So also just think about like, what kind of faculty member do you want to develop a closer relationship with? And then, talk to you about other kind of career opportunities and career advice and those kinds of things. The last course that could satisfy this requirement for you is a course taught by Professor Paul Pope. It's called Thinking, Writing, and Briefing for Intelligence. This course is a little bit different. Dr. Sukolo's course and Professor Lepp's course are going to be relatively similar in terms of how they are run, with different flavors, obviously. Paul Pope's course, you're basically doing a simulation of what it would be like to be an intelligence analyst. And you basically have a file that you follow for the entire semester, and you brief and you write briefings, and you do oral briefings based on your file. And sometimes you brief some of your peers' files, right? So this is a course that's really targeted towards people who want to go into the intelligence community. So if you're just thinking about, getting some policy writing experience, don't take this course. But if you're really interested and you already know you kind of want to potentially go into intelligence, then this might be a good course for you. So any questions about these different flavors, especially any questions to Professor Leff while we have her with us, because I know she also needs to hop off. All right. Well, if not, thank you, Amy, for being here, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, y'all.
So the other course I wanted to introduce you to is the nature of the international system. We have 3 sections of that course offered in the fall semester. One of them is taught by Dr. Josh Busby. So I saw that he was online too. So let me ask him to come online and give a quick pitch for his section of that course.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on today. I'm going to be teaching Nature of the International System. I'm a political scientist by training, and so the flavor of the class will definitely be imbued with that. The aim of the class is to give you core concepts in international relations so that you'll be fluent in discussions that are sort of theory infused, like you'll be able to make sense of debates that are happening out there using the terminology that policymakers are using. You'll also be able to have a better understanding of how the world works and also surface your own assumptions about how the world works based on your prior training. And so I'm going to give you, drawing on different traditions in international relations, a sense of key concepts like sovereignty, anarchy, the role of international organizations, the role of non-state actors in the front half of the class, which is more concept oriented. And in the back half of the class, it's more applied as we think about how governance in the international system works with respect to security, economic policy, environmental policy, and global health. And so the back half of the class is maybe a little bit more tailored to the kinds of issues that I work on, namely global environment and global health. I teach 15-week courses on each of those topics. And so the back half of the class gives you sort of précis, so sort of a short form version in 1 week, what you might get in a 15-week semester. So a bit of a teaser for the kind of work that you might explore if you're interested in those subject areas later on. The kinds of assignments you get in the class are a mix of writing applications in the front half of the class so that you get fluent, literate in applying international relations concepts to real world events, and you can make them intelligible. You'll have a midterm that is really applied based on you'll get a set of news articles that as you sit down to write the midterm, and you'll be asked a series of questions about how to diagnose what's happening in a live real world case and be able to apply and understand it in the context of that real world example. And then for the final set of assignments, you'll have a short paper based on a topic of your choosing about something that you're interested in, so that you can use the concepts of international relations to kind of diagnose what that problem is, barriers to solving it, and what might be done going forward. And you'll have a parallel policy-oriented memo to accompany it. Just beyond those dynamics in the class, I'd note that I recently served in the Biden administration from 21 to 23 in the Department of Defense, working on climate and security. So even though my core interests are in global environment and global health, I have a security interest, but it's sort of non-traditional security threats. And I often teach a class on environmental security, although perhaps not this particular academic year. In any case, happy to provide any additional insights or answer any questions you might have, and old versions of the syllabus are also online.
Thank you, Josh. So the other person who is teaching a section of Nature of the International System is myself. So let me give you a quick overview of how I approach it. I will say The global approach between me and Josh is quite similar. I'm also my PhD is in international relations, so in political science. We actually, with Josh, even intersected in our graduate studies. We both studied at Georgetown for a while. I got my PhD somewhere else, but I got my master's there. So we're not radically different. So let me focus on the differences. My kind of own policy experience is not in the US. I worked in the European Parliament. So I worked in the European Union for a few years. So in terms of kind of just the flavor of, our war stories, right, are going to come from different places. So if one of those sounds more interesting to you than the other, that might be a good reason to pick one over the other. The other difference I would say is I'm going to do an oral exam for your midterm, which most people are terrified of, and afterwards they all appreciate. But it means that, in terms of the assignments, it's going to be a little bit different, although the actual exam is quite similar to what Josh does. So basically, I give you a current event and an international relations theory, and I want you to kind of use that theory to diagnose that event and tell me, how are you able to think about that problem in a more structured and coherent way using that international relations theory, than if you just started spouting off your opinions about that particular topic. My course kind of has three main elements to it. First, I want you to be able to spot these international relations theories that really are the kind of main intellectual tools that policymakers use to make sense of the world. Second, I want you to be able to use these tools yourself. So be able to kind of make sense of really messy, complicated situations by using these theories to simplify them and to create models of the world, and therefore be able to make some predictions or make some analytical statements about them. And then finally, I also want you to be able to critique these theories. So what are those things that these theories then leave out or blind us to, or what are those biases in these theories that we need to be kind of careful about? So that's kind of how I set up all the assignments, is to focus on these three things. The third section of NIS is taught also by myself, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It's going to be exactly the same as when I teach it in the other day, except one of them is going to be Mondays and the other is going to be Wednesdays. So any questions for either of us on this particular course? Okay. So your grad coordinators on the Canvas site should have made available to you old syllabi of all of these courses. I think I can say this I'll say for myself, the syllabus is going to look at least sort of 80% the same as when I taught it last time. Josh, I don't know for you, is that more or less correct as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we update it every year, but the bones and the basic structure are going to be the same. All right. Well, thank you, Josh, for taking the time. So then let me move on to a different course, which is applied microeconomics. So we have two faculty members teaching versions of that course. So let me start with Andrew Waxman, who I think is online, and he can give you kind of his version of that course.
Thanks, Lawrence. Hi, everyone. Great to meet you. My name is Professor Andrew Waxman. I am an applied microeconomist. My research is in the areas of urban and environmental economics, so trying to understand how cities and environmental policies affect humans and communities. So yeah, I teach our applied microeconomics course. It's a course that is taught identically to both of our master's policy programs, so both the MGPS and the MPAF programs. That is for design purposes, which I can go into more detail, the reasons in another point. But what's going to be useful for you is to understand a little bit more what the point of this course is, what it's going to be like, and how to prepare yourself, and how to kind of choose classes, given that you'll likely be expected to take this at some point. So this is a very quantitative course, at least as far as the LBJ school is concerned. Because this is a interdisciplinary professional program, that can mean very different things considering your background. So for those who have a more technical, mathematical, engineering, or science or economics background, this course is pretty vanilla. It's pretty standard, and in some cases kind of easy. If you come with more of a humanities or a qualitative social science background, this will seem as being quite quantitative. And you should think about allocating your time and your course load accordingly based upon your background. I've had students say that this was quite an easy course for them, and I've had students say this was the hardest course they've taken in their entire life. So quite a range. My approach is to meet students wherever they are in the course. So if you've been admitted to this program, you are fully qualified for taking the course once you've kind of worked your way through our quantitative readiness and all of our prereqs that we have, that caveat. The textbook that we use is Pindyck and Rubenfeld's Microeconomic Analysis. It's a standard, typically undergraduate as well as master's level graduate microeconomics textbook. And you'll have lots of details about how to get access to that as the semester approaches. Why are we teaching this in a MGPS program? Taxes, quota, trade policies, the interaction between trade and labor markets, the cost-benefit analysis of policies are all the nuts and bolts of doing policy. And so that's the policy component of the GPS. And a major part of public policy as a field is the subfield of policy analysis. And microeconomics forms the part of the conceptual basis for that, which is to understand how do we make concrete the theories that Professor Radai and others have been mentioning, and how do we relate them to the real world in terms of data? And how do we link theory to cause evaluation of policies and their effectiveness? One thing I just want to mention before I stop is that I am also the microeconomics coordinator, which means that if you have background in microeconomics, and specifically for the applied microeconomics course, if you've taken an intermediate quantitative, that is to say one with algebra, which is the level at which we teach this, microeconomics course, and particularly within the last 3 years, you should follow up with the grad advisors and then subsequently with me to see whether you would qualify for a waiver. Typically, I have a sort of interaction by email and then a call, and we evaluate kind of whether your background sets you up for a waiver. So again, follow up with the advisors for more details on that. But if you have a microeconomics background, that might be advisable for you. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Andrew. And then another section of microeconomics is going to be taught by Dr. Pat Wong. So let me give him the floor for a few minutes.
Thank you, Lawrence. This is Pat Wong here, and I am also the Associate Dean for Academic Strategies and work with Lawrence a lot in terms of coordinating our academic program. But in this context, I am teaching one section of the microeconomics course, and I don't think there is very much difference between the content coverage of my section as compared to Professor Waxman's section. So I am going to not talk about content, but instead point out one difference between him and myself. Other than the fact that he is smart and I'm not so, the important difference is that he is a real economist and I am a pretender. Right? My background is in social work, but I happen to pursue my PhD degree in social work at the University of Wisconsin, studying with a lot of economists. And that's how I learned a little bit of economics. But a very important part of being at the University of Wisconsin is the fact that back at the beginning of the 20th century, Wisconsin was the bastion of what's called historical institutionalism. And today, that influence of institutionalism on the curriculum has already faded. But the university had a very strong atmosphere, flavor of emphasizing the institutional view of looking at things. And I would say I benefited from that. Some people might say I was cursed by that. depending on your perspective. And the reason I want to mention that is because of my training, I think history is really important. And I think the only difference between my section and Professor Waxman's section is that I start the semester with 2 weeks on sort of the historical evolution of economic thoughts before I plunge into microeconomics. And then toward the end of the semester, I also offer a more institutional view of how to think about the economy. The middle part of the course would be pretty much identical to Professor Waxman's teaching. It's basically a neoclassical presentation of economic logic. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions for our applied microeconomics instructors at this point? Yes, Mary.
What do the midterms look like?
Do you want to take that, Pat, or should I?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm glad you asked that question, Mary. So let me just give you a brief sketch of kind of what the assessment. So in my course, we have a weekly problem set that can be quite time consuming, and problem sets are actually kind of the majority of the work for the course. So it's typically 4 to 5 questions. They involve a quantitative component, but also a policy interpretation component. And students often find that they spend the most time not on doing the math, but on interpreting how to set up the problem, because that is the nature of real world problems. They can be quite challenging to think about what's the intellectual machinery to apply to that. Midterms are done. I have a single midterm. Actually, no, that's not true. I have two midterms now. They're going to be done in class twice, I think, is the plan in the middle of the semester. And they're going to be shorter than the problem sets because there's less time for you to work on them, but they're also going to be quantitative problems that test your understanding of the concepts that we've been learning in the class. And then there will also be a final exam at the end of the class. I'll put out a preliminary syllabus towards the end of the summer so that folks who are enrolling in class can get a sense of kind of what those things look like.
I take a little bit more of a multi-dimensional approach in my assessment. I do have homework problem sets, but I only have 2 over the semester. I have pop quizzes throughout the semester. No more than about 10 minutes is an in-class exercise to make sure that you keep abreast of the information throughout the course. I do have the traditional written midterm, and then I have a final exam, which would most likely be oral in nature.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, if not, then thank you to Andrew and Pat for sharing those details about the microeconomics course.
Thank you.
The last course I wanted to mention is analytical methods. In the fall semesters, there's only one section that's going to be offered by my colleague Ji Ma. He is abroad right now, and because of the time difference, he really couldn't make it to this session, but he sent a short video that I'm actually going to share with you so that you get a sense also just like, see a face, be able to put a face to a name, so that you can see kind of and hear about what his approach is. So let me just bring that up real quick.
Hello everyone, my name is Jima. I'm the instructor for the analytical methods for global policy studies in the upcoming fall semester. First, welcome to the LBJ school. And I apologize that because of time difference, I won't be able to attend the section. But I want to make this video recording and say hi to everyone. and I look forward to meet you all in person in August. So a quick introduction about this course. This is a required course for all global policy studies students. And in this course, we will be learning empirical methods, including both qualitative and quantitative, with an emphasis on statistical analysis methods. I think this course is very important, regardless of the future career. I know some of you probably want to be policy analysts, crunching data every day. Some of you probably want to be diplomats, probably won't be run statistics once you out of this class. But please believe me, this set of core empirical methods is important regardless of a future career, because these methods are core to understand evidence-based policy decision making. This is my first time teaching this course, and I see a lot of students no matter their previous experience with data, with number, they can all succeed in this class. One thing I think is very important is keep your mind open and learn these empirical methods together. I think that's very important. I think the hardest part is in my previous experience is very minor students don't believe in numbers, and I think that kind of a resistance make the course very hard to them. As long as you keep your mind open, I think we have everything set up. We have teaching assistant, we have assignments paced up, and also we have workshop. We have a lot of resources helping you succeed in this class. I would love to talk more about this class, either in person, through an email, or whatever questions you have, please just reach out to me. You can find my contact information online. Again, I would love to see everyone in the fall, and see you in a couple of months. Thank you very much, and welcome again.
All right. So that's my colleague Jima talking about analytical methods. Again, it's a core course that that you're going to take either in the fall or the spring semester. Any questions about that course? I know G can't answer them right now, but there might be some things that I or Pat can actually answer about the course, even if he's not here right now. Alyssa, none of our core courses are offered during the summer. So all of the core courses that you need to take are going to be either in the fall or in the spring. In general, this is just a good time for me to talk about this. We have relatively few courses offered in the summer to begin with, because most of our students end up being away from Austin, and they're doing their internship or they're doing something else for their professional development. So generally speaking, we have very few courses offered in the summer months. Some other UT departments sometimes offer some, but generally speaking, graduate level courses are quite few and far between for the summer months. Those of our students who need to earn some academic credit over the summer usually end up doing what we call conference courses, which is our word for independent study. So they'd basically be working one-on-one with a faculty member on a research project or on some sort of academic material. Pat?
I just want to take a minute to talk about the 1 credit hour course. So if you have been following my little corner on the Canvas site, you probably have read my description of how we have formulated the pathway structure to different sections of the methods course. Now, for those of you who do not pass the quantitative readiness assessment by August, you will be asked to take a 1 credit hour course that's going to be scheduled for Friday morning. We haven't decided on the exact time yet, but it will be Friday, and it will be 1 hour per week. and it will be taught by yours truly. I promise you, it's not a math course as you know it. It is going to be a very exciting course that deal with analytic thinking. And our theory is for most people who don't reach the standard of quantitative readiness, doing calculation is not the issue. The issue is a lot of us do not have the training to think about math, to visualize equations, etc. And that becomes very difficult if you can't do that in the methods course and in microeconomics. That's why we want everybody who doesn't pass the readiness assessment to take this 1 credit hour course in the fall semester, and then take microeconomics and methods in the spring semester. Now, one more note on microeconomics. If you pass algebra but do not pass statistics, you should feel free to take microeconomics in the fall. You still have to take the 1 credit hour course to get up to speed on statistics. But the point is microeconomics doesn't require a whole lot of statistics background. And therefore, all you need is to pass the algebra assessment to take microeconomics in the fall. Back to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Pat. So any other questions on core courses at this point from anyone? Okay, if that's not the case, let me talk just very briefly about your non-core courses, so your freely chosen courses. There are two different flavors of these. There are specialization courses and electives. So specialization courses are 15 credits worth of courses, so about 5 courses that you choose, but that need to somehow be coherent around some sort of theme. You're going to discuss this with your graduate coordinators in your individual advising session. So start thinking about what kind of field is it that you want to create some depth of knowledge in while you're in graduate school. We have a couple of sort of pre-baked specializations for you. You can do security, law and diplomacy, international development, energy and environment, or you can create your own. The real reason we have this, just to give you a sense for why we have this, is because global policy studies can encompass basically almost anything in the world. And so we want you to come out with a master's in something where you can say, oh, I know more about a specific field than most people who just happen to walk around on the street, right? So you need to build some sort of policy niche for yourself, mostly to make yourself competitive on the job market. And so we want to make sure that that happens. So this is the role of this specialization. It doesn't show up on your transcript. It doesn't, you don't get a certificate for it or anything. It's just to make sure that you have some focus while you're at the LBJ school. And then you also get 9 credits worth, so 3 courses worth of electives. These are completely freely chosen. You should get the approval of your graduate coordinator to take these kinds of courses. But here we tend to be very relaxed. As long as there's some clear connection to your career interests or to policy in general, you can take a course that would be in the history department, or that would be in the government department, or that would be in community and regional planning, or at the law school, or at the business school, right? Taking intermediate oboe is not really going to fly, but beyond that, anything where you can make a good case that, this is relevant to what you're studying. This is a way that, you have a lot of flexibility in your curriculum to just learn things that you haven't had a chance to learn. Many of our students use this to gain additional skills, whether it's data skills or computer science skills or something like that as well. All of your courses, whether it's your specialization courses, whether it's your elective courses, need to be graduate level courses, but they don't all need to be taken at the LBJ school. So think also about what other departments might be interesting places for you to look for graduate level courses. And so think of the universe from which you pick these courses as the entirety of UT Austin, not just the LBJ school. One thing I would like to note here is that there's a small exception to this graduate level course restriction, which is that you may take up to 6 credits worth of undergraduate level foreign language courses and count them towards your elective requirements in the MGPS program. So if you want to take Russian and you want to take it for 2 semesters, three credits each, that can count towards your degree. But that's the only exception we make. Other than that, no undergraduate course can count towards your degree requirements. Now you can always take courses on top of your usual course load and just take an undergraduate course because you're interested in it. It just won't count towards your degree. So any questions on these specializations or electives? So Alyssa, for specialization courses, so the way I would suggest that you think about it is look through the LBJ course schedule first. I'm sure Laura or somebody can throw the link into the chat for that. That is a list of all of the graduate level, well, all the courses that we offer here at the LBJ school. And then for finding courses outside of the LBJ school, you actually need to go through the UT course catalog, and you need to go by department and do a search where you put in graduate level only. And so it's a little bit of a daunting interface at first because there's so many departments, but 80% of those departments you're going to obviously immediately discount as not being that particularly interesting to you. Like you're not going to take graduate level mechanical engineering courses, right? Or biochemistry courses, right? So there you can at least peruse and look through what other departments might be of interest to you. And that's going to be different for each of you. But for global policy studies, the ones that I would highlight are the different area study centers that UT offers. So Russian, Eastern European, and Eurasian studies, Middle Eastern studies, Latin American studies. Those are pretty obvious. There are pretty obvious connections to what you're studying, depending on what your regional interest is. I'd say the law school and the business school are also relatively common places where our students look for courses. Energy and earth resources for those people who are interested in kind of energy and environment and climate change, as well as community and regional planning, which is basic. It's at the architecture school, but they do a lot of urban planning, and they have added in the recent past a lot of courses on climate change adaptation and climate change mitigation. So those of you interested in that area, you might want to poke your nose in that department a little bit. So it's really up to you. You're going to need to do a little bit of research. But one thing that I will also say about this is, in your first semester, you really aren't looking for too many specialization courses. And for later semesters, you're going to get a lot of advice from, first of all, second-year students whom you're going to meet and who will suggest courses to you, as well as from your faculty policy area mentors. I don't know if the admissions or graduate coordinating staff has mentioned this to you yet, but for various policy areas, we have faculty mentors who are going to have advising sessions with you where they go over specifically like, oh, people who want to work in this field, these are the kind of departments you might want to look in to look for courses. So you'll get a lot more advising and mentoring and help on that, once the kind of summer progresses and especially once you arrive on campus. Other questions? Okay, so let me mention 2 other non-course requirements for graduation. The first is your foreign language requirement. So in order to earn your MGPS degree, you need to provide an assurance that you have intermediate proficiency in a foreign language. This is defined as the level that you would be at after 12 credits, so 4 semesters of college study. So there are a couple of ways that you can prove this, right? The first is if you are a foreign national or you grew up speaking a foreign language and are bilingual, then we count that as fulfilling our requirement. If you, during your undergraduate studies, took 4 consecutive semesters of a language, then you also are seen as having fulfilled that requirement. You can also take language courses while you're at UT. 6 of those credits, so 2 courses can count towards your electives. If you have to start from scratch, then 6 credits will just be kind of on top of what you need to complete for your MGPS degree. And finally, you can also just take a placement exam at UT and place out of these 12 credits. Those are all ways to satisfy this requirement. And so if you know, especially that you have to start from scratch, then you might want to think about taking a foreign language course in your first semester, so you have 4 semesters to get up to speed. But this is something that you should talk to your graduate coordinator about when you're thinking about registration, to make sure that you have a good pathway to meet your foreign language requirement. Any questions on the foreign language issue? Yes, Mary.
When can we place out of those 12 credits? When can we take that exam?
Very good question. So if you, may I just ask a question? So did you take some sort of foreign language in college already?
Yes, I've been studying abroad in Latin America for my entire bachelor's program, and it's like a bilingual bachelor, so some of my courses have been taught in Spanish.
Okay.
And then I also, on top of that, took just some courses in Spanish.
Yeah. So depending on how many courses you actually took in Spanish, right? Like if you actually took substantive college level courses in Spanish, that might actually already meet our requirement. But if not, placement tests are usually offered based on registration times. So there's going to be placement tests offered by the Spanish department in August when you arrive, because that's when all the kind of incoming first years also have to take placement tests. So if worst comes to worst, that's the time that I would take it. And what I meant by consecutive, Mary, by the way, just means like you can't have taken Spanish 1 4 times, right? And say, oh, I've taken the language for 4 semesters. So by consecutive, I just mean that, you need to have actually gotten better at the language, not just taken it at the same time. So if this was really a bilingual school, where you actually took, I don't know, political science courses in Spanish, I think you're probably good. All right, other questions on the foreign language requirement? So the last non-course requirement that you have for graduation is to complete an internship. So you will need to complete 300 hours of some sort of global policy related professional experience in order to earn your degree. The Career Services Office is the one that gives you the approval for whether a specific experience would count towards that. I would say that the majority of our students fulfill this requirement by doing an internship between their first and second years and over the summer, but this is not required. First of all, you don't need to do it in the summer. Some people do it as kind of a part-time internship during the year. Some people take a semester off and do an internship that's during the fall or the spring semesters. It also doesn't necessarily need to be an internship. So if you actually get a job that pays you, and that's a professional experience that's related to global policy, that's great. You don't need to be called an intern. We just need you to get an actual professional experience where you have a boss and you're doing professional policy work. If you find an unpaid internship, there are also LBJ school internship fellowships that are available to you to offset some of the costs of doing an unpaid internship. They might not fully fund you depending on where you need to go, but we try to help you out as much as we can. And we're going to do a full internship info session in the early fall semester to get into the details of all of this. I just wanted to kind of mention it briefly. But does anybody have questions on the internship requirement question?
Are there any examples of work that might have been counted towards this requirement in the past for people coming in with professional experience?
Yeah, so for people who are, so for students who want to request a waiver from this requirement, we set the bar relatively high to be, those people who have 5 to 7 years of professional experience in this field, ideally in some sort of management position. So let me tell you why. Most of the people who come to the LBJ school who have prior professional experience are doing so because they're trying to pivot to either a new sector or a new job. And so it's not that we need you to be, an intern and making photocopies somewhere. It's that we want you to expand your professional network. And so I'll be honest with you, most of I would say 80% of the waivers that we've granted were mostly for active duty military professionals who are going back into the military when they graduate. And so therefore, it doesn't really make sense for them to work in the civilian sphere, build up a whole professional network, and then just receive their orders that they need to go somewhere else anyway. But this is something that you can talk to the Career Services Office about how you can kind of best work with them to figure out what would be the most useful for you in terms of where you want to get to with your career after you graduate. Other questions? Okay, so let me give you just a few final tips for getting ready for graduate school, and then I'll open up to questions about anything at all. So a couple of things I'd note here. The first is read the MGPS student handbook, just so you get a general sense for how things work, how you actually can tell whether a course is graduate level or not, these kinds of things. And especially before you email any of our wonderful graduate coordinators, just check that handbook to see if the answer to your question is in there, because 75% of the time it is. So I just want you to get used to consulting that document and making sure you know what's in there. The second thing I would suggest is, especially if you've been out of school for a while, try to start reading some academic papers and journal articles just to get your mind back into the habit. Academic writing tends to be incredibly terrible prose. And so just getting into that habit of, wading through all of that jargon and a lot of times just really obtuse and needlessly complicated sort of verbiage is something that you just need to get practice with. And it's a good idea to start moving those parts of your brain early on. And similarly, I would really urge you to start reading Foreign Affairs Magazine, Foreign Policy Magazine, think tank reports in those kinds of areas that you're interested in, just to start to get a sense for what are the big questions that are milling around in your particular policy focus, right? So that you can get into that conversation without having to do a bunch of background reading. Like, know what the field is currently looking at. If you're interested in I don't know, intelligence, like what are the big kind of intelligence questions right now? If you're really interested in Latin America, what's really kind of the main big questions in Latin American politics today? You should know that. The fourth thing is start reading the news every single day. Develop some sort of habit for how you are going to read the news. This is going to be crucial for your classes. In every one of your core courses where the instructors were just talking to you, they are going to randomly reference current events and current examples to illustrate concepts that they're teaching you. And if you have no idea what they're talking about, those examples aren't going to help, right? You also just generally, if you want to be an active policymaker, you need to know what's going on in the news. So figure out what it is that's your go-to habit for reading the news, and make sure that you develop one before you come into graduate school. Once you're in here, it's going to be too late to develop that habit. So develop it first. Figure out what are those newspapers that you like to read. What are those websites that you find the most efficient for you to glean information from, right? It's not going to be the same for everybody, but make sure you have that routine going. And then, sort of fifth, speaking of routines, I would urge you to really get an exercise routine going. I know it sounds like this is just like life coaching 101, but in grad school, it's very easy to fall into a habit of not sleeping very much, reading a lot, and just not being able to clear your brain from all the clutter that that is accumulating through all of your readings and your classes. I think the best way to maintain your mental health and your physical health is to have some sort of exercise routine. Whatever it is that you do, just make sure you kind of get into some sort of routine that you can then continue once you come to campus, because it's going to be very important to you. And then the last thing I would say is try to make plans so that you don't arrive at the LBJ school at the very last minute. Get here, with at least a week to get settled, to, set up your apartment. If you are, here taking, whether you're coming for, orientation, whether you're coming for Camp LBJ, those are going to be pretty long, intense days. And so you don't want to start them off, already tired because you haven't even unpacked your apartment. So leave yourself enough time to get settled. We start off the semester relatively quickly. In almost all of your classes, we have classes that meet once a week for 3 hours. So in my first class on the nature of the international system, it's not just like we're going to go over the syllabus. Like, you already have albeit short one, but you have a book to read for that first class, right? So we kind of jump in pretty much from the get-go. So make sure that you get there with plenty of time to spare. So let me stop there and ask you if you have any questions about anything at all that we haven't touched upon. Laura, do you want to take that question?
Can I add something?
Go ahead, Pat.
So I want to piggyback on the very last sentence that you just said, that you would already have a short book for people to read for the first class. And that leads me to the reminder that you really should register as early as possible. I believe the registration system opens up for you on July the 15th, right? So you should register in that very first week. Don't wait till August. You do have a chance to switch classes in August before classes start. But the reason why you should be on faculty members' rosters is because a lot of faculty members will have preparatory materials for you for the very first class, and you are expected to have done them. And if you don't register until the week before classes start, then you would miss the opportunity of having that preparatory materials. Back to you, Lawrence.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Chase, that is correct. Yes, Mary.
If we're receiving one of the LBJ fellowships, is there any discretion about if we need to be taking 3 classes or 4 classes per semester?
Laura, do you want to take that one?
No, typically most of your details will be in your offer letter, but typically the offers include enrolled at full-time status. And so full-time would be 9 hours, but pay attention to the number of semesters listed, right? So it's usually listed out pretty specifically. So if you do take only 9 hours in given semesters, you may, you just, of course, listen to Dr. Rade's advice on what's best for your personal situation and your timing and set yourself up for success. But the degree is designed a little bit, right, to complete in 4 semesters. And so that's likely what your fellowship package might include. And so if you only took 9 hours, then, and we needed to add a 5th semester, you could run into a scenario where you did not have fellowship funding for that semester.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what Laura said, one, feel free to reach out to me at lbjfellowships@austin.utexas.edu to chat a little bit more about your specific situation. But that is correct. Your fellowship letter is for 12 credit hours. That's what we're taking into consideration. So if you're planning to do 9, it will cover up to what it says specifically in your fellowship letter. But that could mean that you are forfeiting some funding for some specific students.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, if not, then thank you everybody for being here. The OSA staff are here to answer any other questions you might have. I've put my email address in the chat as well. If you have some sort of broader, bigger questions as well, feel free to reach out to us. And otherwise, we look forward to meeting all of you in person in August and to sweat together in the Texas heat.